Genevieve Coventry sat down at my kitchen table like she was doing me a favor. "Put the money back," she said, "and we will find you a seat, maybe not up front, and we forget this whole ugly thing." "So I pay $40,000, I said, "and for that I get to sit somewhere dignified, long as it is not the front." She stood up and asked if I had any idea who I was talking to, and I looked her dead in the eye. "A woman," I said, "who is about to find out exactly who she underestimated. My name is Roz Ashby. I am 62 years old, and I built everything I own with these two hands and one busted old pickup truck. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments. And please, stay with me until the end. Let me back all the way up, because the story of that kitchen table starts a long time before Genevieve Coventry ever set foot in my house. I want you to look at my hands first. Go on, look. They are not pretty. The knuckles are swollen up like walnuts. The palms are rough as a cinder block. And there is a callus on my right thumb thick enough to strike a match on, put there by 40 years of gripping a framing hammer and a steering wheel before the sun ever came up. For a good long stretch of my life, these hands embarrassed me. I used to sit on them at nice dinners so nobody would see. I do not do that anymore. They are the truest thing about me, and every last thing I own in this world came straight out of them. I started swinging a hammer when I was 22. Framing crew, all men, and not one of them thrilled to have some girl on the site. I got on with that outfit because they paid in cash and they did not ask a lot of questions, and I taught myself to read a set of blueprints the way other folks read the Sunday paper. I was faster than half those men inside a year. Did not make them like me any better. Made them like me a little worse, if I am being honest. I have broken this nose twice and more fingers than I bothered to count. I have worked Novembers cold enough to crack the skin on my knuckles till they bled right into my gloves. Nobody hands a woman like me a single thing. You take it or you go without. So I took it. I had Sloan a good deal later, when I was 32, and for a little while I let myself believe her daddy was going to stick around. He did not. He decided somewhere around her second birthday that being a father was not really his speed. And one ordinary Tuesday, he just did not come home. And that was the whole conversation. That was the goodbye. So there I was, a rent payment I could not cover, a little girl who needed me, and no plan in the world except do not drown. And that is the year, with Sloan barely 2 years old, that I finally quit working other men's crews and bought my own truck, because another man's payroll does not stretch far enough when you are the only one left holding all of it. And I was flat done waiting on anybody to hand me a future. That was the whole empire on day one. One truck with a bent tailgate, a box of secondhand tools, and exactly one job. A rotted out back porch on a little house at the edge of town that was one good storm from falling into the yard. The family paid me $900 to rebuild it, and I built them a porch that will outlive their grandkids. And they told their neighbors, and those neighbors told theirs. That is the entire origin of Ashby Construction. One porch and a handful of people with big mouths. God bless every one of them. 28 years later, Ashby runs close to 40 people. We have got a yard full of trucks. We do framing and full remodels and historic restoration all over this county. And I carry real health insurance for every single soul on that payroll. One of my 4 women came to me at 26 with 2 little kids, a black eye, and nowhere to sleep. And I put a hammer in her hand and a check in her pocket and never once regretted it. I have handed a whole lot of women their very first steady paycheck, the kind the temp agencies would not look at twice, because I remembered exactly what it felt like to be that woman standing there with nothing. That is what the company was ever really for, not the trucks, the people. I am proud of it the way you are only ever proud of a thing that took everything you had to build. And here is the one lesson this work beats into you that you never get to unlearn. A house does not stand on how it looks. It stands on the foundation, and the foundation is the part nobody ever sees. You can hang the prettiest paint in the county on a frame that has already gone soft, and it will fool everybody who drives past, but it comes down the first hard winter. Every single time. I did not know it yet. sitting there later in my one good dress trying so hard to be liked. But I was about to spend a whole year learning that some families are built exactly like that. Fresh paint over rotten wood. But before any of that, it was just me and my girl, Sloane, my only one. I raised her by myself in a rented duplex where the heat never once worked right, and I would walk straight into traffic for that child. I need you to know that going in, because the rest of this is going to make you good and angry at her. And I do not want you any angrier than I already had to be my own self. I gave that girl everything I had. And at the start, that was not money, because there was none. So I gave her the rest. When she was 7, she went through a spell where she wanted to be a writer. So I hauled a stack of leftover cedar home off a job site and I built her a bookshelf, sanded every board smooth as glass so she would never catch a splinter, and I stood it up in the corner of her little room. She filled every shelf inside a month. She used to tell anybody who came over, "My mama built that one." Back then, she was proud of these hands too. I never missed a thing. Not one recital, not one ball game, not once. Even when I rolled in straight off a job site in boots caked to the ankle in mud and sat in the very back of the auditorium smelling like sawdust and tar, while the other mothers in their clean, pressed clothes gave me that look I got so used to I could feel it coming across the room. I put her through college $100 at a time, working the sun-up shift so I could be somewhere by 9 for whatever mattered to her. And I told her every single day of her life, "You can be anything. Baby, you hear me. Anything at all." And she believed me. She grew up and became a brand manager for a company downtown. Smart, polished, quick as a whip, dressed like the magazines. And somewhere on that long climb up, she got a little ashamed of the ground she started on. The way kids sometimes do when they claw their way to higher ground and make the mistake of looking back down at it. It started small, the way rot always does. She quit telling people her mother was in construction. "My mom is in real estate development," she would say, real light and breezy, at those nice work parties of hers. Development. Like I spent my days in a glass tower pushing money around a desk instead of climbing scaffolding at 58 with both knees hollering at me. I remember standing right next to her at one of those parties, close enough to touch her sleeve, when a man in a good suit asked what my mother did, and she looked clean past me and said, "Oh, she is in development," and steered him along to somebody more interesting. I was standing there in the only nice dress I owned. I just smiled and held my little glass of warm wine and pretended I had not heard my own daughter edit me out of the room in real time. The first time she did it, I felt something drop clean out of my chest, but I let it go. Pride is a complicated thing in a kid who watched her mama scrub tar off her forearms every night just to keep the lights on. I told myself she had earned the right to make herself into somebody new. I told myself an awful lot of things that year. And then she met Alden Coventry. The Coventrys were old money, or the memory of old money, anyway, which I would come to learn is a whole different animal and a far more dangerous one. Big name in this county going back 3 full generations. And my Sloane did not just fall for Alden. She fell for the entire world he came wrapped in. The ease of it, the way those people strolled into any room like the floor, had been poured special just to hold them up. And God help me, I was happy. Genuinely happy. I thought, my girl is going to marry into a family that never once has to count pennies the way the two of us used to count them at that kitchen table. So I offered to pay for the wedding before a single one of them thought to ask me. It was going to be the proudest check I ever wrote in my life. Every last cent of it earned on my knees on other people's floors. I had no earthly idea what I was about to walk into. The first time I met Genevieve Coventry, I put on the dog. I wore the one good dress I own, the navy blue one I saved for funerals and my own self-respect. And I got my hair done, which I do maybe twice a year whether it needs it or not. I brought a bottle of decent wine and a little potted orchid, because my mama raised me to never walk into a person's home with empty hands, no matter whose home it happened to be. I sat out in my truck in their driveway a good 10 minutes, working up the nerve, staring at that big brick house with the ivy crawling all over the front of it. And I told myself, Roz, you have built half the nice houses in this county. You have got no earthly business being scared of this one. I was scared anyway. Funny how that works. The dinner was to celebrate the engagement, and I walked in there wanting so bad to be liked that I could taste it. And I want you to remember that about me, because it is the part that shames me the most looking back. I walked in ready to shrink myself down to whatever size made these people comfortable. Genevieve met me in the front hall. She took my rough hand into her soft, smooth one, and she held it for exactly as long as good manners strictly required, and not 1/2 second longer. And she looked me over the way you look at a coat you have already made up. Your mind you are not going to buy. Alden tells us you are in construction, she said. And she said that word, construction, the same way you would say the word lice. How industrious. I run my own outfit, I told her. 28 years now, built it up from a single truck. And she gave me this thin little smile and said, how nice that there is always somebody who needs a thing torn down and put back up. And then she turned her shoulder and went off to talk to somebody who mattered more than me. That was the whole entire relationship, right there, inside the first 90 seconds. I was the help who had somehow got above her raising, a woman who swings a hammer for a living, standing in the good hall, presuming to be family. Now, here is the thing about the Coventrys that I did not understand that night, and would only put together slow, piece by ugly piece, over the year that came after. Their money was mostly gone. 3 generations back, the Coventrys owned Coventrys, which was the big department store downtown, the one your grandmother bought her wedding gloves at, the kind of place that had a name in gold leaf across the front, and a doorman and a tea room up on the 4th floor. It went belly up decades ago, before Alden was ever born. Could not compete once the malls came, and then could not compete once the malls died either. What the family had left after that was the name, and a big drafty house they could not afford to heat right, and the old Coventry building sitting empty in the middle of downtown, with a roof that had been sagging so long the pigeons had staked a claim. And they had one more thing, the biggest thing of all, a bottomless, ferocious, clawing need to be seen, to still matter, to have people whisper Coventry in a certain tone when they walked into a room. I will tell you something I learned building for rich folks all these years. Old money with empty pockets is the proudest and the most dangerous kind of money there is, because it has got nothing left in the world to protect except the appearance of having something. Real wealthy people, the quiet kind, they never once cared where I came from, because they had nothing to prove to a soul. It was always the broke ones clinging white-knuckled to a faded name who could not stand the sight of me at the good table. And here came Roz Ashby, some woman with dirt under her nails and an actual checkbook, offering to bankroll the exact kind of party that would let the Coventrys stand up in front of God and the whole county and prove they were still somebody. They wanted my money real bad. They just could not stomach the idea of me sitting up front while they spent it. I did not see any of that yet. I was still out in the kitchen offering to help with the dishes. So let me tell you how I handled the money, because this is the part nobody ever pays a lick of attention to, on account of nobody watches what the construction lady is doing with the paperwork. When I said I would pay for the wedding, $60,000, all of it, I did not hand anybody a check. I have never in my whole life handed one living soul a blank check, and I sure as anything was not about to start with people who looked at me the way Genevieve did. I did it the exact same way I do every single thing in my business. I became the customer, every last vendor, the estate, the caterer, the florist, the band, the photographer, the whole 9 yards. I sat down and I signed those contracts my own self. Roz Ashby, responsible party, right there on the signature line. I paid the deposits out of my company account. I set up the rest to go out in installments the way I pay my subs. A piece now and the big money later as the work got closer. And because 28 years running a company has beat one lesson into me till it is bone deep, that a handshake is worth exactly nothing the minute people quit being nice. I had my lawyer read every single page before I put my name on any of it. My lawyer is a woman named Deirdre Callahan, and she has kept my company out of the ditch for 20 years running. Deirdre reads a contract the way a hawk reads a field. She went through that whole stack, and she circled something on the estate contract with her red pen. And she looked up at me over her glasses and she said, "Roz, you understand you are the only name on any of this. Every one of these." She tapped the cancellation terms with her pen. "Now the deposits." She said, "That money is gone the second you pay it. You would never see a dime of it back if you ever walked away. But the big money, the balance on all of these, that has not left your hands yet, nobody but you can spend $1 of it. Why on earth would I walk away?" I said, "It is my own daughter's wedding. No reason in the world," Deirdre said, and she capped her pen. "Just always good to know where the exits are, Roz. Never hurts a soul to know where the door is." I did not think one more thing about it. I slid all those contracts into a folder, and I put the folder in my desk drawer down at the yard, the fireproof one, where I keep the deed to the building and the few things I could not stand to lose. And I flat out forgot every word Deirdre said to me that afternoon. I would remember it 11 weeks before the wedding, at 11 o'clock at night, with my phone shaking in my hand. But I am getting ahead of myself. Now I have got to tell you about the venue, because this is where it gets good. And this is the part I could not have written if I tried. Genevieve took over the venue hunt almost the second I offered the money. "Just had some thoughts," she said. And she came back a couple weeks later, practically glowing, which was about the only time I ever saw that woman glow over anything. And she announced that she had secured Wexford House. She said it like she was announcing the second coming. Wexford House was the grandest place in the whole county to get married. An enormous old estate out on the north end with white columns and a marble staircase and gardens somebody famous had laid out 100 years back. You had to book it a year out. It was the kind of address that told everybody at the party, without one word getting said, that the family throwing this thing was quality. That was the entire point of it. For the Coventrys, Wexford House was not a wedding venue. It was proof. There was just one thing Genevieve did not know when she booked it. She figured it out the day of the first walkthrough. We all rolled up together, me trailing along behind the Coventrys the way I had already gotten used to trailing, and the estate manager came out the big front doors to meet us. Her name was Colleen Hartley, and Colleen took one look at me standing there in the back of the group, and her whole entire face just opened up like a window. "Roz Ashby," she said, loud, right across everybody, "as I live and breathe." And she came straight past Genevieve, past the mother of the groom in her good silk, past all of them. And she took both my hands in hers like we were old family, which in a way I suppose we were. Because here is the thing. Ashby Construction restored Wexford House. My crew, my hands. The whole estate had been a wreck 15 years back, condemned nearly, water pouring in through a roof that was more whole than slate, that famous marble staircase all buckled and split, dry rot chewing through beams the size of my leg. The county was one vote away from tearing the whole thing down. And Ashby got the bid, and we spent the better part of 2 years bringing it back from the dead. I personally climbed all through that roof structure. I stood on ladders in that grand ballroom for months with my neck cricked back looking up, matching plaster, saving what could be saved and rebuilding by hand every piece that could not. There is a signature carved into a hidden joist up over that ballroom ceiling, up where the pretty part covers it and nobody will ever lay eyes on it again. And that signature says Ashby, because we sign our bones the way a painter signs a canvas, and then we close up the wall. Colleen knew all of it. She had been the manager the whole time. She stood there in front of the Coventrys just gushing, telling them how this woman right here, this very woman, was the reason there was a Wexford house left standing at all for their boy to get married in. How nobody else in the county would have touched a job that far gone. How she still walked people through the ballroom and told them the story of the crew that saved it. And I watched Genevieve Coventry's face while Colleen said all that. I watched her try to fit it together, the construction woman and the grand estate, and just plain fail. You could see it did not compute for her, like two colors that were not supposed to touch. She had picked the single most impressive room in the entire county to look down her nose at me in, and it turned out I was the one who had put the roof back on it. And do you know what I did with that? In the moment, not one thing. I did not say a word. I just smiled at Colleen and thanked her and told her the ballroom had come out real nice. And I let Genevieve go right on believing whatever she needed to believe about who I was. Because that is another thing this work teaches you. You do not have to tell everybody what you can do. The building already knows. It will hold you up whether they believe in you or not. I filed it away, same as I filed away Deirdre's words about the exits. Both those things went in the same quiet drawer in the back of my mind, and I shut it, and I got on with trying to be liked. Lord, was I still trying to be liked? I did not know yet that these people had no intention of ever letting me be family. I did not know that the whole thing, the party, the columns, the name in gold leaf, was already being built the exact way I had spent 40 years teaching myself to spot on a job. Fresh paint slapped straight over rotten wood. And I did not know that the slow, quiet work of erasing me out of my own daughter's wedding had already begun, one small polite cut at a time, and that my Sloane, my baby who used to point at that cedar bookshelf and tell the whole world her mama built it, was going to stand there and let every last cut land. But that came next. And it started, the way rot always starts, somewhere you cannot see. The takeover happened the way these things always do, slow and then all at once, and every single step of it dressed up nice and polite as help. It started with the guest list. Genevieve just had some concerns, she said, about the numbers. And somehow every time we talked, the numbers had gone up on the Coventry side and down on mine. There were Coventry cousins I had never once heard Alden mention. There were business friends of Alden's father, Ellsworth, and their wives, who would not have known my Sloane if she served them lunch. And the further that list stretched to make room for all of them, the more my side got squeezed, quiet and steady, like a stud wall getting shoved out of plumb an eighth of an inch at a time until the whole thing is crooked and nobody can say exactly when it happened. My baby sister Nadine, who used to babysit Sloane so I could take the overnight shifts, got cut down to a +1. My crew, the people who had actually held my family up on their shoulders for 30 years, the ones who showed up with a casserole every time life knocked me flat, got squeezed down to a handful of seats way in the back. It is just that we know so many people, Genevieve explained to me, real gentle, like she was breaking hard news. And a wedding is really about the families joining together, dear. The Coventry name carries certain expectations. The Coventry name. I heard that phrase more times that year than I heard my own daughter's voice. Then the invitations went out, and I never got asked one thing about them. Not the color, not the wording, nothing. I just saw the finished product like everybody else on the list. And printed right there at the top of every single one was the Coventry family crest. A crest, like they were royalty and not a broke family sitting on a pile of unpaid bills and a name that used to mean something back before the mall. When the engagement ran in the local paper, and it did run, because the Coventrys made sure of that, it said my Sloane was marrying into the prominent founding Coventry family. And down at the bottom, it said the wedding would be hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth Coventry. Hosted, with my $60,000. I would call Sloane to ask about some little thing, the flowers, whether they had settled on a cake, and she would say, "Oh, Genevieve already handled that. Mom, she has such a good eye for this stuff." A good eye. With my money. And I kept telling myself the same thing, over and over, like a prayer I did not quite believe. It is not about you, Roz. It is Sloane's day. Do not you dare make it about you. That is the trap right there. And I want anybody listening who has ever been the one who pays and smiles and steps to the back to hear me on this, because I did not understand it until I was already all the way inside it. They count on you loving that child too much to ever make a scene. Your own decency is the rope they tie you off with. Your goodness becomes the leash. And I let them clip it on. And I told myself the whole time that the leash was love. But it was Sloan changing that cut the deepest, and I would be lying if I told you otherwise. My girl started talking like them, started caring about things she had never once cared about her whole life. The right handbag, the right zip code, whether a thing was tasteful, whether it was done. She got quieter around me, or maybe just busier. In that particular way, that means the exact same thing. The Sunday phone calls got shorter, and then they got further apart. When I mentioned coming to a planning meeting, there would be this little pause on the line before she said it probably was not necessary. Genevieve had it all handled, and I understood it even while it was breaking my heart clean in two, because I had watched it building for years. My Sloane had spent her whole childhood watching her mother get looked down on. She had smelled the tar on me at her recitals. She had seen the faces the other mothers made. And now here was this whole gleaming family holding the door open to a world where nobody would ever look down on her again, where she got to be a Coventry instead of the construction lady's kid. And all she had to do to belong to them was be just a little bit ashamed of me. And she was choosing it, a little at a time, the way you choose anything bad. One easy, reasonable step after another until you turn around one day and you are somewhere you swore you would never go. I want to be fair to her because I love her and because you have got to believe she had a good heart underneath all of it for the end of this to land the way it should. She was not cruel by her nature. She was a girl who had been poor and was scared to death of ever being poor again, marrying into a family that traded belonging for loyalty and was teaching her, one lesson at a time, that I was the price of the ticket. And then came the humiliations. And these I did not tell myself stories about, because you cannot dress these up. The first one was at Wexford House, of all the places on this earth. My house, the one I saved. We were doing a walkthrough to sort out the layout, and when we got to the doors, one of Genevieve's people, the planner she had brought on, looked at her little clipboard and told me, real pleasant, that if I would just wait right here with the vendors, the family was going to walk the ballroom and get a feel for it. Wait here with the vendors. In the building I climbed the roof of. In the ballroom where my own signature is carved into a beam over everybody's head. I stood out in that grand entry hall for the better part of an hour, on the marble I helped rebuild, holding my purse in both hands like I was waiting on a bus. While my daughter and the Coventrys walked through the room, I gave back to this county and decided where the important people would sit. And I did not say a word. I just ran my hand along the plaster of that wall, real quiet, the plaster I matched by hand. And I thought, I know you, even if they do not. You and me, we know. The second one was that newspaper announcement. Because when I finally read the whole thing, all the way down, it listed the grandparents of the happy couple. It named Ellsworth's parents. It named Genevieve's parents. 3 generations of Coventrys, all spelled out proud. And it did not name me. 18 years I raised that girl by myself with my own 2 hands, and I was not anywhere in the story they told the whole county about where my Sloane came from. The one time the piece mentioned me at all, way down at the bottom, it called me self-made, in construction. Self-made, said the way you would mention a charming little defect. Bless her heart. She came up rough. And the third one is the one that should have warned me if I had been paying the right kind of attention. I was down at the print shop dropping off a change, and I got a look at a proof of the ceremony program, the little folded paper they hand out that tells everybody who is who. And there, under the family, where it listed the mother of the bride, it had my name spelled Ashbay, I-E-I. Not even my own name spelled right on the paper at my own daughter's wedding. I stood there in that print shop looking at the wrong letters, and I felt something in me go very still. And I did not understand yet what that stillness was. I do now. It was the frame going soft. It was the part underneath, the part nobody sees, starting to give. Each and every time, I swallowed it, and I told myself the same tired thing. It is Sloane's day. It is not about you, Roz. But here is where I found out it was not just a bunch of little accidents. Here is the part where I learned it was built on purpose. drawn up on a plan, coordinated, the way you frame a house, and that I was never once meant to be in it. It was a Tuesday night. I was home with my boots off and my feet up and my knees hollering the way they do, and my phone buzzed. Somebody had shared a draft of the seating chart to a group text, and by pure blind luck, I was on that group. An oversight, a mistake, because I was never supposed to see this one before it was set in stone. And I looked at that chart, and I found me. They had me at a table way in the back, right up against the doors the caterers run in and out of. Table 11, and they did not even have my name on it. It just said R. Ashby, not Roz, not Mom, not Mother of the Bride, which was written plain as day up at the front table where a seat sat empty next to the groom's people. R. Ashby, table 11, back by the kitchen doors, behind the Coventry cousins, behind a state judge I had never laid eyes on in my life, behind Ellsworth's banker and his wife. And when I looked at the ceremony order, the walk-in, the part where the family comes down the aisle together in front of everybody, my name was not on that list at all. They had cut me clean out of the family procession. I was not going to walk in as anybody's mother. I was going to find my own way to table 11 and sit down quiet by the kitchen and keep my mouth shut while the important people took the front. And I want you to understand, I might have talked myself out of even that one. God knows I had talked myself out of everything else. But then my phone rang, right there while I was staring at it, and it was Colleen Hartley calling from Wexford House. Colleen had seen the same chart, and Colleen was hot. She said, Roz, I have got to tell you something, and I do not care if it is my place or not. She said the Coventrys had called her, and called the caterer, and called the florist, every vendor down the line, weeks back. And they had given all of them the same instruction. Anytime the wedding got mentioned, in a program, in a toast, on a sign, in a single word to a single guest, the family hosting it was to be listed as the Coventrys. And my name, Roz Ashby, the name on every one of the contracts, the name that had paid every deposit, was to be kept off of everything, all of it. Colleen said she had told them flat out that I was the one who signed the contracts, and you know what they told her. They told her that was simply a private financial matter and no concern of the guests, and the family did not want the celebration cluttered up with the wrong name. The wrong name. So it was not a bunch of accidents piling up. It was a plan. It was drawn up and it was handed out, and it was carried down the line to every vendor in the county. And the whole entire point of the plan was to take my money and erase my face in the same motion, to have my hand open and my head turned away at the same time. I sat there in my recliner with my swollen knuckles and my phone gone quiet, and for the first time in that whole long year, the story I had been telling myself just would not hold. It is not about you, Roz. Except it was. It was about me. It had been about me the whole time. They had sat down and made me the one thing you are never supposed to make anybody, invisible and paying for it. I thanked Colleen. I told her she was a good woman and she had done right by me. And then I sat there in the dark a long while with the chart still lit up on my phone. R. Ashby Table 11, back by the kitchen doors. And I did the thing I always do. God help me. Even then, even after all of it, I decided to give them one more chance. So the next morning I called her, calm, and I need that part on the record, that I tried the reasonable way first, mother to daughter, before I did one other thing in this world. I have never been a yeller. You do not survive what I survived by yelling. You survive it by staying quiet and steady while the whole thing shakes, the way you stay steady on a roof in a wind. So I made myself a cup of coffee, and I sat down at my own kitchen table, and I dialed my daughter, and I kept my voice soft as I knew how. Sweetheart, I said, I saw the seating chart come through last night. I think there has got to be some kind of mix-up. It has got me way in the back at table 11, honey by the kitchen doors, and there was a pause on the line. I want you to hear that pause the way I heard it, because that pause told me everything before Sloane ever said a word. It was not the pause of a girl who was surprised, or a girl who was about to say, "Oh no, Mom, let me fix that right now." It was the pause of a girl who already knew, who had been waiting for this exact phone call and had her answer all lined up. And when she finally spoke, it was not really her voice that came out. It was careful and it was rehearsed, and it belonged to somebody else. "Oh," she said. "Mom, yeah. So the thing is, the front is kind of spoken for. Genevieve's family is really big, and there are some important people coming on Alden's side. And you know, baby," I said, "I am the mother of the bride." "I know," she said, real quick. "I know. It is just that Genevieve feels really strongly that the front should reflect, you know, the family standing in the community." And I sat there with my coffee going cold in my hand, and I said the words back to her, nice and slow, so I could be sure I heard them right. "The family's standing," I said. And then my Sloane said, the thing that I know down in my bones she did not come up with on her own, because it was not her voice in it. It was Genevieve's, word for word, passed into my daughter's mouth like a script somebody handed her. She said, "Mom, honestly, it is not a big deal where you sit. You will still be there. Genevieve says you should just handle the check and let the people who understand this kind of event handle the parts that matter. Just handle the check and let the people who matter handle what matters." There it was. The whole entire year said right out loud, in my own daughter's voice, in my future-in-law's words. I was not a mother. I was a funding source. I was a checkbook with a pulse that they would tolerate at table 11, long as the money kept clearing. And I did not blow up. I did not even raise my voice. I just said, "I see. Let me think on it, Sloane." And I hung up the phone, and I sat there in my quiet house with my two rough hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, and I looked at them a long time. I should have known right then what I was going to do, but I did not. Not yet, because I always give one more chance. God help me, my whole life. I have always got one more chance in me. I told Frankie about it the next morning down at the yard. Frankie Mazur has run crews for me for 22 years. She is the forewoman I told you about, the one who came to me at 26 with two little ones and nowhere in the world to sleep. I put a nail gun in her hand back then and taught her to frame. And today she runs 3 of my crews and tells me the God's honest truth, whether I want to hear it or not, which is exactly what a real friend is for. We were standing out by the trucks with our coffees in the cold, and I told her about table 11, and I told her about just handle the check, and Frankie set her cup down on the tailgate hard enough that it sloshed. "Roz," she said, "listen to yourself. It is Sloane's day. I started. It is your money," Frankie said, "and it is your daughter. And those people are teaching that girl to be ashamed of you with your own wallet. You are out here financing the exact people who look down on you, so that they can look down on you a little more comfortable." She shook her head at me. "My mother cleaned houses in this county till her back gave out at 55, Roz. Scrubbed other women's toilets so I could have shoes. And if anybody had tried to stick her at a table by the kitchen door at my wedding, paid for or not, I would have walked that woman up to the front row my own self and let every snob in the building sit out in the parking lot. I did not say anything to that. "You always do this," Frankie said, and her voice went soft. "You think being a good mother means making yourself small. It does not. Sometimes being a good mother means showing that kid what a person with some self-respect actually looks like standing up. And she is never going to learn that from those people, Roz. Not in 100 years. The only place on earth she is ever going to learn it is from you." I drove home that night with Frankie's words rolling around in my chest, and I knew she was right, and I still was not sure I had it in me to be anything but small one more time. That is the truth. I sat in my recliner with my boots off and my knees aching, and I was 90% of the way to swallowing it all over again. And then right around 11 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed on the side table, and my daughter made the whole decision for me. I found out later what had happened on their end that day, and I want to tell you because it matters. Genevieve had gotten wind that I had made a fuss about the seating, And to Genevieve, some construction woman questioning where she got placed was a flat-out outrage. The help forgetting its place. So she had gotten to Sloan that afternoon, worked on her, took my perfectly reasonable request to sit up front at my own child's wedding and turned it inside out until it came out looking like me being difficult, me making the whole thing about myself, me threatening to ruin the biggest day of my daughter's life over a chair. By the time Sloan picked up her phone that night to type to me, she was not really my daughter anymore. She was a scared girl who had been told, over and over by people she was desperate to belong to, that the woman who raised her was a problem that needed managing. So she sent it, and I do not even think she fully felt what she was typing, because the cruelest part of it was not hers. It was Genevieve's voice, put in her mouth one more time, and my baby just repeated it like directions to a place she had never been. Here is what it said. I have got it memorized, and I expect I will till the day I die. Mom, Genevieve and I talked, and we really need you to drop the seating thing. It is causing so much stress. You can still come to the wedding if you are paying for it, but please do not expect a seat up front. The front is for the Coventry side and the important guests. Please just let this go. It is not about you. You can still come to the wedding if you are paying for it, but please do not expect a seat up front. I read it 3 times. And I sat there and I waited for the hurt to come and knock me flat the way it had 100 times that year. I braced for it, and it did not come. Something else came instead, something I had not felt in a real long time, and it came up through me clean and cool and clear, like the first cold water after you have been thirsty all day out in the heat. And it was not rage, and it was not grief. I have felt both plenty, and it was neither one. It was the exact feeling I get right before I sign a contract I have already made up my mind is a good one. It was certainty. I looked over at the folder, because that is the thing. That is the whole thing the story turns on. That green folder was sitting right there on my side table, because I had pulled it out of the fireproof drawer a few days before for something else entirely. Some little question with the caterer, and I had just never carried it back to the yard. Pure chance. It was sitting there 8 inches from my hand, and every single vendor contract in it had one name on the signature line, and that name was Roz Ashby, responsible party. And I heard Deirdre Callahan's voice come back to me across all those months, capping her red pen, telling me the deposits are gone the second you pay them, but the big money has not left your hands. Always good to know where the exits are, Roz. I had spent 1 whole year looking for a door and swearing to myself I would never walk through it. My daughter had just showed me exactly where it was. So I set down the phone and I picked up that folder. And for the first time in a year, Roz Ashby quit being a good sport about all of it and went back to being a businesswoman. I opened it up and I checked my position before I made a single move, because that is what 40 years of this work will do to you. You do not swing until you know what you are swinging at. And here is what the paper told me. The deposits were gone. About $20,000, already paid out. Money I would never see again no matter what I did. And I made myself sit with that number and look it dead in the face, because it was going to be the price. But the balance, the big money, the other 40,000, that had not gone anywhere, it was still mine. Every one of those contracts ran straight through my signature and nobody else's. And that meant if I pulled myself out of it, there was no wedding, not at Wexford House, not with that caterer, not on that date. Just a dress and a day on the calendar and a family with a proud old name, and some part of me already suspected, though I would not know it for sure for a few more days. Empty pockets to go with it. $20,000 to keep my dignity. I have paid a lot more than that for a lot less in my life. So I picked the phone back up and I typed my answer to my daughter, and I did not type it angry. I typed it slow, the way you write the one line in a contract that the whole deal hangs on, because I wanted every word of it to be exactly true. I typed, keep your front row. I will keep the 40 grand you were counting on to fill it. I read it over 1 time. I meant every letter of it with my whole heart. And I hit send. And then here is the part. Here is the part I want anybody listening to really hear, because it is the part that saved me. I did not sit there and wait for her to call. I did not stew on it. I did not draft up some long follow-up trying to explain myself. I have learned one thing in 28 years of running a company, and it is this. The time between when you make a decision and when you actually move on it is the only stretch of time your nerve ever fails you in. That little gap in the middle is where good people talk themselves right back into the trap. So I gave my nerve no gap at all. I called Deirdre Callahan at 9 minutes past 11 at night. She picked up on the fourth ring, all sleep in her voice. Roz, she said, it is after 11. Is the yard on fire? No, I said. But I need you to do something for me first thing. And I needed to tell you tonight, right now, so I do not lose my nerve by morning. And I laid it all out for her. The whole year boiled down to about 90 seconds. Table 11. Just handle the check. You can still come if you are paying for it. And Deirdre went quiet for a second. And then when she spoke again, her voice had changed completely. It was her business voice, the one I have paid for all these years. And she said, all right, tell me what you want to do. I want out, I said. All of it. Every contract I signed. Cancel it. Stop every payment that has not gone yet. I am the only name on any of these. Deirdre, and I want to use every bit of that. And I want it started tonight before I can talk myself out of it in the morning. You understand what that means, she said. It means there is no wedding. Not at these vendors. Not on this date. I understand exactly what it means. I told her. I have spent a whole year understanding it. They want my money, and they want me at table 11 by the kitchen doors, and they cannot have both anymore. I am the one who gets to choose which one I keep, and I am keeping the money and my good name, and they can keep the chair. You are going to lose the deposits, she said. All of it. That is gone. I know it, I said. $20,000. I already looked at it. It is the cheapest thing I have bought in years. Deirdre did not fight me. She is too good a lawyer to try and talk her client out of the right call. What she did was tell me straight how it would actually go. None of this Hollywood business. And I want to get it right because it matters. She said she would draft the formal notices tonight, every vendor. Put my cancellation in writing under my name as the sole responsible party, and get them sent tonight so they were on the record. Time stamped. No chance of anybody claiming later they did not know or trying to call my daughter first and spin it before the facts were in. But the actual canceling, the real machinery of it, that happened in the morning, in business hours, the way these things have to. So she would send the written notice tonight to lock it in, and she would get on the phones first thing when the offices opened. And Roz, she said at the end, real gentle. Once these notices go out, this is real. Sloan is going to be devastated. I looked down at my hands in my lap, the swollen knuckles, the callus on my thumb. Sloan is going to be devastated either way, I said. She can be devastated as a girl who found out her mother has a limit. Or she can stay comfortable as a girl who learned her mother has none. One of those is worth something. Deirdre. Send the notices. Sending them, she said. Go to bed, Roz. You did a hard right thing tonight. I did not go to bed. I sat there in my recliner in the dark with that green folder in my lap, and I waited. Because I knew, the way a mother just knows, that the phone was going to ring. My reply was sitting on my daughter's screen right that second. One plain line in a voice she had never once heard me use with her. And I knew Sloan. And I knew it would land on her different than any of them expected. And I knew she was going to call. She did. 1 hour later, the phone lit up at 5 past midnight. Sloan. I let it ring twice. And I want to be straight with you. It was not to make her sweat. It was to make my own hands quit shaking. Because making a decision is one thing, and hearing your child cry over it is a whole other thing. And I needed to be steady before I picked up. Then I answered. Mom. She was already crying, the words tumbling all over each other. Mom, what does that mean? Your text. What do you mean you will keep it? What are you going to do? Please tell me you are not doing something. The wedding is in 11 weeks. Mom, what did you do? I did exactly what I told you I do, sweetheart, I said. And I kept my voice as level as 40 years of standing calm on a shaking roof taught me to keep it. You told me I could come if I was paying for it, but not to expect a seat up front. And I told you I would keep the 40 grand, and you could keep the chair. I am a woman of my word, Sloan. So I kept the 40 grand. But you cannot, she said, and her voice went up high and thin. Mom, everything is booked. Everybody is invited. Genevieve is going to. She was hyperventilating now. Please tell me it is not too late. Please tell me we can fix it in the morning. Honey, I said, it is already done. My lawyer sent the notices an hour ago, in writing, with my name on them, and my name is the only name on any of it. It is not a threat I am making. It is a thing that already happened. And there was this silence on the line, this awful little silence, the sound of my baby understanding for the first time in a year that her mother was not bluffing and never had been. Why would you do this to me? She finally said. And there it was. Why would you do this to me? Like I was the one who had done a thing. Like the whole year, the table by the kitchen doors, the just handle the check, the name spelled wrong, the crest. All of it had just been weather that happened to us both, and my one single action was the only cruelty in the entire story. Sloan, I said, and I made myself gentle, because I love her, and because I was only going to say this once, and then we were both going to try and get some sleep. I want you to really hear me. I did not do this to you. I declined to keep doing it to myself. There is a difference, baby, and it is the whole difference in the world. You are being selfish, she said, and I could hear it. I could hear that it was not even her. It was the script somebody had installed in her. It is my wedding, and you are blowing it up because you did not get a good enough chair, because your feelings got hurt over where you were sitting. A good enough chair, I repeated, real quiet. Sloan. It was the front row at my only child's wedding. It was the one seat in that entire room that was only ever mine. Your father should have been up there next to me, but he left when you were 2, so it was just going to be me. One seat, the only seat in that whole building that belonged to me and nobody else. And they put a state judge I never met in it and stuck me by the kitchen door, and you called that a chair. She was crying harder, but the crying had changed. There was confusion working into it now. The first real crack in the script, the sound of a young woman starting to actually hear herself. I did not blow up your wedding, I said. You and Genevieve did that, the day you decided the chair mattered more than the mother sitting in it. All I did was stop paying for the privilege of being told so. And then my Sloan said the thing that broke it wide open. Genevieve was sitting right there, she whispered. When I sent the text, she was standing over my shoulder in the kitchen, and she told me what to put. She said, if I did not send it, you would keep making it about yourself and ruin the whole day. And Mom, I just typed what she said I did not. She stopped, because she heard it. She heard exactly what she had just told me, that the meanest thing anybody had said to me all year, that you can come if you are paying but do not expect a seat, had not even come out of my own daughter. It had been fed to her, word for word, by a woman standing at her shoulder. And my baby had just passed it along like directions to a place she had never been. I know, sweetheart, I said. I knew it when I read it. That was not your voice in that text. I have known your voice since before you could talk. That was hers. And she just cried. Let me tell you about that $40,000, I said, because she was quiet now and finally listening. And some things you only ever get one clean shot at saying. That is not just money, Sloan. That is 11 years of overtime, of me on somebody else's roof at first light, with both my knees screaming. That is the down payment on a house I never once bought, because every time I got close to it, I put the money into your tuition instead, $100 at a time. That is me, a house in the cold at 58, so I could knock off early and be at whatever you needed me at by noon. Every single dollar of that money came straight out of these 2 hands. I looked at them while I said it. The hands Genevieve shook, like she might catch something off of them. I heard her breath catch on the line, and I offered it up glad, I said. I wanted to give you a beautiful day, Sloan. There is nothing on this earth I would not give you. But there is a difference between giving and being taken from. Giving is when a person takes your gift and they see you standing there behind it. Being taken from is when they want your hand open, but they want your face turned away. And I have spent my whole life letting people take from these hands. I decided tonight I am done letting anybody do it to my heart. Mom, she said, and her voice just came apart. I love you more than my own life, I told her. I have since the second they laid you on my chest. In a hospital, I was still making payments on the day you walked at your college graduation. That has never changed and it is never going to. But I will not fund my own humiliation, Sloan. Not even for you. Especially not for you. Because one of these days you are going to be somebody's mother. And I need you to have seen with your own eyes what one looks like when she finally stands all the way up. She was crying, but she had quit arguing. And I knew that was the start of something, even if she did not know it yet herself. Go to sleep, sweetheart, I said. We will talk again when the Coventrys are not standing in your kitchen telling you what to say. And I hung up, gentle, and I sat there in the dark a long while. And then I finally went to bed, because I had a company to run in about 6 hours and a hard week coming. And something in me already knew just how hard it was, fixing to get for the people who had counted on me being small. Genevieve called me at 8 the next morning. I let it go to voicemail. I had crews to get out the door and a foundation pour on the east side that would not wait on anybody's hurt feelings. And some phone calls you take on your own schedule, in your own time. So I listened to the message later, sitting in my truck in a gravel lot with a cold coffee. And I want to tell you, it was a piece of work. It started out gracious. Rosalind, dear, I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. And over about 90 seconds, it curdled, right there in my ear, into something with its claws all the way out. By the end of it, she was informing me that I was behaving like exactly the sort of person everyone had worried I was, that I had humiliated the family, and that I would, of course, be reinstating everything immediately, as this had gone quite far enough. Reinstating everything immediately. Like I was some subcontractor she had caught cutting a corner. Like the $40,000 of mine somehow how hers to command back into existence with the right tone of voice. I did not call her back, not out of spite. I just did not have one thing to say to that woman that I had not already said in one plain line. And I had a feeling that if I let it sit, Genevieve would not be able to leave a closed door closed, and she would come to me. People like that always do. They have to have the last word the same way they have to have the name. But here is what started coming clear that week, and it is the part that turned my stomach, because it was worse than I had let myself guess. The Coventrys were broke, and I do not mean tight. I mean the whole thing was hollow, top to bottom, the way a beam looks solid right up until sink a screwdriver in, and it goes straight through into powder. I build for people in this county, and people talk to the woman on the crew the way they never talk to each other. And I had been hearing pieces of it for months without letting them add up. Ellsworth's business interests turned out to be mostly debt wearing a nice suit. One thing propping up, another thing propping up nothing at all. Genevieve, the grand Genevieve, had been quietly selling off her mother's jewelry for years, one piece at a time, to keep that big cold house looking like it still had somebody in it who mattered. And the old Coventry building downtown, the one with their name in faded gold across the front. The roof on that thing had been condemned. I did not have to hear that one secondhand. I knew it firsthand, because a year and a half back the Coventrys had called Ashby out to give them an estimate on that very roof. And I had walked it, and I had priced it fair, and they had gone dead quiet on me and never called back. And at the time I figured they had gone with somebody cheaper. Now I understood. There was no cheaper. There was no anybody. They just could not pay to keep their own name from falling in on itself, and they had been too proud to say so. And here came Roz Ashby, some woman with dirt under her nails, offering to bankroll the exact kind of party that would let all of them stand up in front of the whole county and look. One more time. Like the family the gold letters said they were. The grand Coventry wedding the Coventrys had been so busy hosting had never once been theirs to host. It was mine. It had always been mine. They had just gotten so used to my money that somewhere along the way they had started to feel like it was a Coventry resource. The same way you stop noticing the people who put the roof back on the building you are standing in. And it was worse even than that. And this is the part I got. Slow from things Sloane let slip once she started coming back to herself. That marriage was not just a wedding to them. It was a plan. They were counting on Sloane's paycheck, and they were counting on me, on my generosity, on this soft-touch construction woman who could never say no to her little girl, to be the floor under the whole rotten house for years to come. I was not a mother-in-law they were tolerating. I was the retaining wall they were building against the day the whole Coventry name finally came down. Except the retaining wall had just walked off the job. And I will tell you the exact moment my Sloane stopped being one of them, because I watched it land on her, and it did not have a thing to do with money. That week, with my 40,000 pulled out and the panic setting in over there, Alden had one chance to be a man about it. One. His mother was on a tear, saying ugly things about me, about my daughter, in front of my daughter. And Sloane told me later that she watched Alden open his mouth. She saw him almost say something, almost put his hand on her, almost tell his mother that was enough. And then she watched him flinch and close his mouth and go quiet and slide right in behind Genevieve like he always did. He did not defend me. He did not defend Sloane. He just got smaller, the exact way I had watched my own girl get smaller for a year. And he picked his mother. And Sloane sat there and watched him do to her the precise thing she had spent a year doing to me. She told me later that was the moment the shine came off the whole gleaming Coventry world for good. Not the money. Watching the man she was supposed to marry go silent while his mother tore into the people he claimed to love, and understanding, all at once, that she had been that silence, that she had been that flinch for 18 months, and that she had been about to promise the rest of her life to it. She did not know yet what she was going to do about it, but Genevieve was about to force everybody's hand, because Genevieve could not leave that closed door closed. And 3 days later, she came to my house. And she brought Alden with her, trailing along behind her like a man walking to his own whipping. And my Sloane was standing right there in my kitchen when they knocked. I let them in, because I am not scared of anybody in my own kitchen, and because Sloane was standing right there, and I wanted my daughter to watch this with her own 2 eyes. Genevieve swept in like she was inspecting a property she might just lower herself to buy. She took in my kitchen, the old linoleum I keep meaning to replace, the work boots lined up by the door, my mama's rosary hanging off a nail by the window, and I watched her file every bit of it away under beneath me. She sat herself down at my table without being asked. Alden hung back by the door with his hands in his pockets. Looking at the floor, Sloane stood over by the counter, real quiet, watching. I poured 3 cups of coffee and I set them down, and I sat across from Genevieve with my hands wrapped around my own. And this is the part you already saw, back at the start, before you knew a single thing about how we got here. You have made your point, Rosalind, Genevieve said. Everyone is very impressed by your independence. Now you will restore the funding. We will find you a seat, not the very front perhaps, but somewhere dignified. And we will put this whole ugly thing behind us. The invitations are already out. The Coventry name is on the line. The Coventry name. Always the name, right down to the last minute of it. Let me make sure I've got your offer straight, I said. I set my cup down. You would like me to pay $40,000. And in exchange, I may sit somewhere dignified. Just not the front. That is more than reasonable. It is the same offer, I said. You have just put nicer words on it. And the answer is still no. Genevieve's mouth went tight. Do you even understand who you are speaking to? She said. I looked her dead in the eye. A woman, I said, and I did not raise my voice 1 inch. who is about to find out exactly who she underestimated. And that is when Genevieve's polish finally cracked all the way through. And the thing that had been living underneath it the whole time came out into the open, and my Sloane got to see it bare. Do you have any idea? Genevieve said, and her voice climbed. Do you have any idea what it has been for this family to absorb this marriage? To explain to people that Alden is marrying the daughter of a woman who swings a hammer for a living. We gave your daughter a name, access, a fure. The very least you could do, the absolute least, is fund the celebration quietly and let the people who actually understand society handle the rest, instead of throwing a tantrum over a chair like some common. Careful, I said. Real quiet. And something in the way I said it stopped her cold. Common, I said. Go ahead and say it. Genevieve, you have been choking it back for a year. Common. The construction woman who forgot her place. And I want you to look at your son while you say it. Because here is what is interesting to me. In this entire arrangement, only one family has been grasping after the other one's money. And it sure was not mine. I never asked you people for a dime. You needed $40,000 out of my two hands to throw a party you could not afford. So you could stand up in front of this whole county and feel like the somebody your bank account has been telling you for years that you are not anymore. Genevieve went white, and then she went red. That is a lie, she hissed. Is it? I said, and I looked past her, at her boy. Alden, look at your mother, and tell me the Coventrys can write a $40,000 check today. Go on. Tell me, and I will apologize to your mother right here at my own table, and I will put every dollar of it back this afternoon. Alden looked at the floor. He did not say one word. And that silence, that was the loudest thing that got said in my kitchen all day. Sloane heard it. She was standing right there by the counter, and she watched her fiancé sit in silence rather than tell one true thing about his own family, and I saw it land on her. I reached over to the counter, and I picked up the folder, and I set it on the table between us, and I opened it, and I laid those contracts out one at a time, slow the way you lay down cards when the hand is already won. These are the contracts for your son's wedding, Genevieve, I said. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the band, the photographer. Read the signature line on any one of them you like. She did not move, so I read it for her. Roz Ashby, Roz Ashby, Roz Ashby, every single one. Not Coventry, not Sloane, not Eldon. Mine, every last one of them mine, because I am a businesswoman. And a businesswoman does not hand a proud broke family $40,000 and just trust them to be kind about it. I have been the only name on this wedding since the day it started. I could have taken your columns and your judge and your crested invitations off the board any morning I felt like it. I just kept hoping, right up until your voice came out of my daughter's mouth on a Tuesday night, that I would never have to. And then I looked at that grand estate on the top contract, and I said the thing I had been carrying quiet in my chest since the day of the very first walkthrough. You chose the grandest hall in this whole county to look down your nose at me in, I said. Wexford House. You booked it because that address tells everybody you are quality. Genevieve. That building was condemned 15 years ago. The roof was falling in and the county was one vote from tearing it down. My crew brought it back from the dead. I climbed that roof myself. There is a beam over that ballroom ceiling, right over where you were going to seat your important people, and my name is carved into it, up where nobody will ever see it again. You picked my own building to put me at the kitchen door in. These hands built the room you were so proud to be standing in. Genevieve stared at those contracts with her name nowhere on a single one of them, and for just a second, 1 second, I saw it. The fear, the real thing under all of it. A woman looking at the last card in her hand and finding out it was never a card at all. You told my daughter, I said, that I should just handle the check and let the people who matter handle what matters. So that is exactly what I did, Genevieve. I handled the check. I took it back. Now you go on and handle what matters. The estate, the caterer, the guests, the judge, all of it. Without it, I closed the folder. Let me know how that goes, I said. Genevieve stood up so fast her chair scraped hard across my linoleum. She was shaking, and not with sorrow, with the particular kind of fury so person gets when they have just found out the floor was never theirs to stand on. You will regret this, she said. You have humiliated us. Do you have any idea what people are going to say? That the Coventry wedding fell apart because the bride's mother, some construction woman, threw away $40,000 rather than sit where she was put. Yes, I said. That is exactly what people are going to say. And every single working person in this county who hears it is going to understand me completely. You ought to worry a whole lot less about what people will say, Genevieve, and a whole lot more about what is true. And you did all this, she spat, reaching for the wound one more time. You destroyed your own daughter's wedding over a seat. I stood up too, so we were eye to eye in my little kitchen. You keep the front seats, I said. All of them. The judge, the cousins, every important body you can find. Keep every chair in the building. I will keep my $40,000 and I will keep my good name. And I held up my hands, the swollen knuckles, the callus, the whole rough map of my life. And you want to know the strangest thing, Genevieve, I said. These cost me the exact same. 40 years of these two hands bought me the money and it bought me the dignity, both out of the same work. And I am not about to spend the one to lose the other. Not for you. Not for a chair. Not even for my own daughter. And from across the kitchen, in a small, clear, steady voice, my daughter said, "She is right." The whole room turned to look at Sloane. She was standing there by the counter where she had been quiet the whole time, and something in her had finished changing. I had watched it move all week, and now it was done, and her spine was in it. "She is right, Genevieve," Sloane said again, steadier this time. And I am ashamed it took me this long to say it. She looked at Alden. All week I kept waiting for you to defend her, or me, or anything at all. And you just stood there, the exact same way I stood there for a year and a half, while your mother treated mine like the help. Her voice cracked, but she kept right on going. I almost turned into you, both of you. I sent my own mother a text telling her to pay for my wedding and sit in the back. My mother, who put a nail gun down and drove across town in muddy boots to make it to every recital I ever had. Sloane, Genevieve warned. Think very carefully about what you are. I am thinking carefully, Sloane said, for the first time in a year. And she walked across my kitchen, and she stood next to me, next to the construction lady, right there in front of the Coventrys. And she took my rough hand in both of hers, the way not one single person in that gleaming family ever had. I would rather sit at the kitchen door next to my mother, she said, than up in the front row next to people who would put her there. Genevieve's mouth opened and shut. Alden stared at the floor. I think you should both go, Sloane said quiet. And Alden, do not call me tonight. I need to think real hard about whether I want to marry a man who watched his mother do this and said nothing. She squeezed my hand, because I already know one woman who would never in her life sit silent while somebody she loved got treated like that. And I am related to her. I forgot that for a while. They left. They did not slam the door. People like that never do. It was the last time Genevieve Coventry ever sat at my table. Here is how it all shook out, because I know you want the ledger and not just the feeling, and I have always believed in a clean ledger. The $20,000 in deposits was gone. Every dollar of it. There was no Hollywood refund, no venue calling to say never mind. We will give it all back. I ate that 20 grand, and I would do it again tomorrow, because some things are just what they cost. The other 40,000, the balance, I simply never paid, because it had never left my hands and it never would. The Grand Coventry wedding never happened. There was no version of it those people could pay for themselves, which is the whole truth of the Coventrys boiled down into one clean sentence. The crested invitations went in a drawer. The engagement ended, not in a blow-up but in a fade, which is exactly how the weekend things. Alden never did call to defend Sloane, or me or himself, and a few weeks when she gave the ring back. I kept waiting for him to turn into a man who would stand up, she told me, and I realized I was watching a documentary about my own life, and I did not want to marry the thing I was finally trying to stop being. And here is the part Genevieve never saw coming, because she never once in her life understood the county she was so proud to be somebody in. She went around telling everybody who would hold still that construction woman had blown up the wedding out of spite. And it turned on her like a snake, because you cannot build for a whole county for 30 years and have those people not know exactly who the honest one was. Every single person who has ever worn a name tag or swung a hammer or cleaned an office in this town knew precisely what had happened and precisely whose side they were on. And it was not the family with the gold letters. And then the same local paper that had been so glad to run the prominent founding Coventry family. They got wind of the real story, and they ran a little follow-up, and that follow-up mentioned, real polite, that the wedding's funding had come entirely from a well-known local business owner and not from the family that had announced itself as host. That was all it said. It was enough. The name Genevieve had spent her whole life propping up came down in public, in print, killed by her own gossip and a paper trail with my signature all over it. Fresh paint, and everybody finally got to see the rot underneath it. And I will tell you what I did with the 40,000, because it is the best part, and it is the thing Sloane's father never understood about money, and Genevieve never will. I gave it to my daughter. All of it, but not for a party. Sloane found a little house, a real fixer, the kind of place most folks would drive right past. And I put that 40,000 toward it, and I put it in her name, on her deed, her mortgage, hers. And then my crew and me, we fixed it up ourselves. Frankie ran the framing. We were out there on the weekends, the whole outfit, my people, the ones who had held my family up for 30 years, rebuilding that little house with the same hands that built everything else I own. The money I would have spent on one beautiful afternoon of getting treated like the help, I spent instead on giving my girl the one thing I never had at her age, a door of her own that locks, in a home nobody can ever seat her at the back of, because it is hers. You should keep it, Mom, she said when I told her. You earned it. You earned it on your knees. I did earn it on my knees, I said. And there is not one person on this earth I would rather get up off them for than you. We hauled the cedar bookshelf out of my storage, the one I built her when she was 7, and we stood it up in her new living room, and it is full of books again. And by the front door, she hung a photograph she took her own self, a close-up of my 2 hands, the swollen knuckles, the callus on the thumb, and underneath it she wrote, "These built everything." Up in the attic of that house, before we closed the last wall, my whole crew signed their names on a joist, and Sloane signed hers right in the middle of them. She works with me now. A little runs the marketing for Ashby, the thing she is actually good at, building up the company her mother started out of one truck. She is not ashamed of it anymore. The other day I heard her on the phone tell a vendor, "Yes, my mother owns it. She built it from one truck. And you are going to want to read your contract real careful, because she does." And she winked at me across the office. I ran into Genevieve one time, months later. It was down at the old Coventry building, of all places, because the family finally had to sell it, and the new owners hired Ashby to restore it. So there I was, walking my own crew through the lobby with the faded gold letters up above us, and Genevieve was there clearing out the last of the family things. She saw me, and for just a second the old reflex crossed her face, that little flinch of a person deciding whether to acknowledge the help. And then I think she remembered how it had all come out, whose signature had been on everything, whose daughter had chosen whom. And she gave me a small tight nod, and she looked away first. I did not gloat. There is nothing in it to gloat over. Genevieve is a frightened woman guarding an empty name, and that is a harder life than mine for all her gold letters. I have got 40 people who count on me, a daughter who took my hand in front of the ones she was scared of, and a company built out of these two ruined, beautiful hands. I nodded back at her, polite, and I went on and got my crew started because we had a roof to put back on. Even hers. In the end, even hers. People ask me sometimes if I regret pulling the plug. I do not. I spent 40 years building things for other people, and there is one thing you cannot unlearn on a job site. A house only stands if the foundation is poured honest. You can hang the prettiest paint in the county on a rotten frame, and it will fool everybody who drives past. But it comes down the first hard winter. That was their name. Paint overwrought. My hands are not pretty, but everything they built is still standing. So here is what I will leave you with. Give with your whole heart. Give till it feels good. But the day somebody wants your open hand and turns their face away, that is not love asking you for something. That is a bill. Set it down. Keep your kindness and your dignity in the same hand. They cost you the very same to earn. That is my story. One text, one call to my lawyer, and $40,000 that came home. If it reminded you that your worth was never up for a vote, take that as your sign. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.